Michelle Marie McGrath. Welcome to Unclassified Woman. Today I'm delighted to be speaking to Lisa Murray of Creativity Lab. As founder of Creativity Lab, Lisa is an unconventional business coach, a prolific writer, and a non-stop creator of ways to nurture your ideas into life. She's multi-creative and she invites you to collectively create a future to be inspired by via her live events and online programs globally. If you desire to make your life and the world greater through your choices, join Lisa for one of her free mini e-courses in embracing courage, writing wild, or creating money. She also offers the Nurture Project, where you begin to nurture your ideas into life. Lisa has an MBA in entrepreneurship and leadership. She's an Access Consciousness certified facilitator and lover of living. She's launching 3 books, including Stop Waiting, Start Creating this year. And you can find out more about Lisa and her fabulous work at creativitylab.tv. So, hi Lisa, so great to have you here today.
Thanks, Michelle. Great to be here.
I'm so looking forward to our conversation, and I love all your work with creativity as well, so looking forward to getting into that. But just to set some context for us today, would you mind sharing with us about whether you've not had a child due to personal choice or through circumstances?
Yeah, it's a great question. If you'd asked me this, say, 10 years ago, I would have said to you circumstances. And yet now when I look at it, I can so see that it was choice and that I didn't really ever desire to have a child, And I thought I did, but I realized I was just picking up other people's points of view that were projected at me and that I should have a child, And there's so much of that. And when I realized that it wasn't even my point of view, it was such a relief to go, oh, I don't actually even desire this. I can just go and create something different now.
Absolutely. And you make such an important point there, that basically often it's just how we're conditioned, that's what we should be expecting. It's the assumption, isn't it, of our society that that's what you will do. It's when, not if.
Oh, yeah. And I feel the need to tell this story. A few years ago, I went to see some family friends that I had known literally since I was born. And I went to see them about a business situation. And the grandfather called me into his office. He said, before you talk to the boys, he said, I'd just like to have a chat with you. I said, oh, yeah, sure, no worries. And he sits me down and gives me this big lecture about it was time for me to get married and have kids. He'd been talking to my dad and he thought that, I'd better settle down.
Wow.
And I was horrified. Here I was going there for a business meeting and that's what I got as the start of it.
So inappropriate.
Well, it was in so many ways. And I had a few words with my dad when I got home. I'm like, hey, don't ever have that conversation with anyone ever again. It's not your business. It's not their business, The
fact that they feel able to sit you down and give you that unsolicited advice.
I know, it was incredible. It was one of those, I was actually quite stunned at the time. And I love the guy. He's a beautiful guy, but I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And I was just very polite and very nice. And I was like cutting that conversation short, because it was just so inappropriate. And I think this is what happens, is people think that whatever they have chosen is the right answer. And really there is no one right answer. There's what's right for you.
Absolutely. Often people don't consider, is this really what I want, or is this just that I'm fulfilling the expectations of those around me?
Yeah, and I think, for me, in some ways I was really lucky because for a very long time I had a lot of anxiety. And the thought of having a kid and having anxiety just gave me more anxiety, And so I was actually very fortunate that the way I was living really stopped me from going into that process. And so then when I came out of the anxiety, I realized, actually, that would make you anxious because it's not something that would be fun for me. And the more I've taken my life into that creative space of what I would really desire to create in the world, the more fun it's become and the less anxiety I've had, actually.
And so Did you have a specific point, Lisa, where you realised very clearly, okay, having a child is not for me? You said before that you realised that, these expectations, the thoughts and beliefs about it, you realised they weren't really yours. It was what was being projected. So how did you kind of have that very clear realisation? Because often people don't realise that.
Yeah, look, I don't know that it was one moment. I think it was a combination of quite a few things. I mean, I was always very career driven, and I at one point had really severe burnout. And I think around that time was probably when I went, hang on a minute here. I could have a really different life, and it doesn't have to involve kids to be a great life,
Yeah.
because I quit my job and I had about a year where I wasn't very well. And then I started being quite a lot better. And I started a couple of businesses and played with a whole lot of different things. And I was like, oh, this is actually really fun. I'm enjoying having, my life to myself, my own choices, being able to create what I would like to create rather than what someone else wants me to create. And I realized that if I had a child, it was going to put a stop to a lot of my very new discoveries of what was really enjoyable for me. And, and some people would call it selfish. And in one way it might be, but I looked at, well, if I had a child, what difference would that make in the world? If I, created what I could actually create, what difference would that make in the world? And there's so much more space and energy and possibility in creating rather than having a child. A child is one sort of example of a creative energy, but it's not the only one.
No, it's one of many. And that is a really interesting point that you make, that you can, give birth to a child in the physical sense. And of course, I'm not saying that doesn't have an impact at all. Of course it does. But then you can maybe in other ways impact many more people or the situations or create change in some way by bringing something else to life.
Yeah, look, absolutely. And for me, like one of my things that I work with a lot of people on is like not living in the shoulds, not living in what you should do. And this is a really big example of that in a lot of ways, because so many people I've seen have become parents and then they've gone, oh my gosh, what did I do? Because, yes, the kids are beautiful. And I love kids. I have a niece and nephew and I've had wonderful times with them over the years. And my friends' kids, I love talking to them, love seeing how they're going, all that kind of thing. And yet, for me to have to look after a child day in, day out would not create the kind of change and possibilities in the world that I know is possible.
Absolutely. So true. And when you had that realization, like you said, it could have been a gradual thing of going, maybe that's not for me. Was there a part of you that went through any grieving process at all, or did you just feel very resolute about it, that no, that's just not going to be part of my life?
I think there's two bits in here. One was I felt very relieved when I've really finally got to that place of no matter what, I'm not choosing to have a child. I just felt relieved. And I didn't actually realize how much stress that even the idea of it had been causing me. So that was one part of it. And the other part, really weirdly, was that, like, I have quite an awareness of past lives. Yeah. And there was one person I was at one point who was quite famous. And so I could do some research on that life and find out more about it. And I realized that I'd had 10 kids. And I tell you what, I realized that, when you look at it from that very, very, very big perspective, having children in a particular lifetime is not so essential. And that actually gave me a lot of ease with it, in the sense of it was like, oh, well, I can just choose to have kids next time if that's what I choose. Or, I've been there and done that before. It's not something that's essential for right now.
I think the thought of having 10 kids would create anxiety for most people.
Oh, yeah. When I look at it, I mean, it's quite a funny story. When I read about it, I was like, oh, my gosh, this is hilarious. I am funny, But it's like I looked at it and went, oh, I can see why in this life it really wasn't that interesting to me.
Yes.
The things that are interesting to me is my writing and, what I'm creating when I'm traveling around the world and all the different connections I have with people. And it's like, how many different ways can you contribute to the world?
Absolutely. And only you can decide what's true for you in that way and what feels, right. As it's so important to take that time to actually listen to ourselves, and very telling that you had that massive sense of relief once you were really clear and were like, okay, that's why I've been having all this anxiety, and I didn't realize it was to do with that, because that's obviously not the right thing for me.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that the anxiety was only that. It
Yeah,
was just
yeah,
about everything. But
yeah.
it took a huge layer off because, like I could look after my dog quite well, but that's a bit different to looking after a child.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's yeah, interesting how you come to those things. And it was very gradual for me. And in a way that's a good thing, I think, because it was just like, okay, well, I've just changed my mind. I'm not interested in that anymore. Let's go in this direction and see where that can lead.
Yeah. And so interesting that we were saying about, there being those assumptions that that's what you will do and that is what we're used to. So there are so many myths that connect in with that. Like, so for example, one of the things that we often hear and that we're taught to believe is, it's natural to want to be a mother. And obviously it's equally natural not to want to be a mother if that's not right for you too.
Well, I think it's natural to want to create something in the world.
Yes. Yeah.
That's what I go to. And it's so interesting in a way that I created Creativity Lab as it is, because literally it's about creating. It's about going, well, what can you bring into the world that would make the world a more amazing, beautiful, wonderful place? It might be a child, it might be a business, it might be a book, it might be a movie, it could be a painting. It could, there's so many things that we can all bring into the world in different ways. And I think that if we all stopped, what would I say, like fitting into the one box and started looking at the thousands of boxes that actually are our choices, and they're not even really boxes ultimately, but if we stopped all trying to fit into the same box, there would be, a much happier planet overall, because the people who don't really desire to become parents wouldn't become parents. And those who could give the kids the love and the care and the attention and all the things that kids truly do require would be able to do that and be great parents. And I think it is this thing of really looking at, well, what are you good at? And, for me, one of my big questions is always, what would I like the world to be like 1,000 years from now?
That's a great question.
Yeah. And what happens when you look at that is you can't put it into the limitation of, oh, I have to create this thing, or I have to have a child, or I have to do this. You have to go to the energies of what you would like it to be and then go, well, how would I bring those energies into the world with all the skills and gifts and capacities that I've got?
The whole topic of creativity, I think, is always fascinating, because some people will say, well, I'm not creative. And that's really looking at such a narrow bandwidth, a very narrow definition, when in fact, we are all creative beings just by the essence of being alive, really. And so often it's more to do with creative expression, I feel, is just self-expression. Like, how do you express yourself in the world? And obviously a traditional way is through having a child. And exactly as you say, it's about creating something, which can be, there's no limit to what that could be. And being creative could even be, the way you make a meal, or the way you arrange flowers, or the way you dress yourself, or, there's no limit to that, is there?
Well, my sense is that we're actually creating in every single moment.
Yeah.
And, and this is what I've been writing about in the book that I'm having out soon. It's like literally we create in every moment. So let's be aware of what we're creating. And is it something that we would like to have in our future?
Yes.
Because when you have a child, it's a long-term, it's a very long-term sort of choice.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. And for me, it's like, I love to change my mind, and it's like, okay, so how many different things could I create that would make a huge difference in the world? And that sort of thing of always looking at every moment of what your choices are, because most of us think we make 2 or 3 or maybe 5, maybe 10 choices in our life, and I've made my choices, I've got to live with them. And my general point of view is, okay, so what's my choice now, and what's my choice now, and what's my choice now? And it's so much more of a fun, playful way to live.
And that obviously that varies from moment to moment. As the saying goes, every moment is a new opportunity to start again.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm always creating something different and something new because that's what makes me happy. And this is the thing I think to look at is what's going to make you happy.
And what brings you purpose and meaning? And only you can decide that as an individual. And if it's purposeful and meaningful for you, there will be a way to share that impacts others in a positive way. If it's something that really, fills you with passion and joy, and just if you have that excited buzz, it's great to be able to follow that feeling in some way if you can.
Yes. And so, look, and this is the thing, a lot of people stop themselves. Like I did a talk last week, and one of the ladies was saying, well, I've got my husband and I've got my 3 kids, and how do I ever focus on my business? And it was all sort of like, oh my gosh. And my point of view is, well, you include everything. You don't exclude your husband, you don't exclude your kids from your business, you don't exclude your business from your family life. You literally allow all of it to be present at once. And in that, you actually start to have this very full life.
Yes. And often, I know so many amazing women that have got young children and they're also running a business at the same time, and their children are their inspiration to create their business for them, and that gives them energy.
Oh, indeed. And I think this is the thing is when you're creating something that's important to you, that you're really excited about, you will have more energy, not less.
Yeah.
Like I know for me, when I had the burnout, it was very interesting to see that all of that exhaustion was literally because I was creating other people's dreams that I didn't even believe in.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
And when I came to that realization, it was literally a big fat slap in the face because I saw how hard I'd worked for other people's dreams. And it was like, okay, something has to change here, I'm not going to live the rest of my life like this. And I'm really grateful for the whole situation because it made me so clear that I don't get tired if I'm creating something that I'm really excited about.
Yeah, and that's the answer, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what advice would you give, Lisa, to those who are really considering how they can create a different path of meaning for themselves and they're not sure where to start into tapping into that creativity?
Yeah. I would start to look at what makes you happy. Like when I had the burnout, someone said to me, make a list of everything that makes you happy. Well, there was like 5 things on it, wine, chocolate, my dog, and a couple more. Reading,
Yeah.
there wasn't many.
Sounds familiar.
And I was horrified when I saw the list. I was like, wow, that's not a really, great recipe for a happy life. And so I very much like one of my first things was to start looking at every single thing that made me happy. And I literally just started asking everything I saw, everything I talked to about, would that make me happy? Does that make me happy? Would I enjoy that? And I started to get a much longer list. And, that's grown massively over the last 8 or so years. And when you start to have a sense of what makes you happy, then you'll go towards that rather than always looking at what's making you unhappy, And what I know is that I have just like over time incorporated all the things that make me happy into my businesses in some ways, into my life, so that literally there's this flow to it and you get to a space where almost every moment of almost every day is really enjoyable.
Yeah.
And that is creating your life, actually.
It is. And so obviously a lot of your work is helping people to, tap into their creative energy and look at what, how they can create lives of meaning with what they're doing and all your sort of different courses and things. So how do you feel that you express your creative energy? I know you're saying like, obviously you're creating that in every moment, but have you got any particular pursuits that really energize you?
Yes, I do. Most definitely. I love to write. Like if I'm writing, I'm happy. It doesn't even matter what I'm writing. That's the funny thing. I can literally be almost writing anything and I'll be happy. So for me, writing, and it is an expression of your being when you write, So literally, even if I'm writing for a client, there's still some expression there of me in some way. And so, so writing definitely. And I would say the other thing that I've, in the last probably 2 or 3 years, come to really enjoy is playing with horses. Because again, they show you who you be. Like if you ever want to know like how you are as a leader, go and play with a horse. because the horse will show you if it's willing to follow you or not, if it's willing to have you as the leader of its pack, by who you're being, not by what you say to it, because it doesn't understand words that well, but literally by who you're being. And so I've done a lot of work with horses, and it's fascinating to me what you can learn from a horse. They're just incredible.
Lisa, that's interesting. I interviewed somebody recently, Christine Erickson, author of The Mother Within. Now, she is based in California and she's also an equine therapist. And she
Cool.
runs these annual retreats whereby exactly what you say, women who are often going through a bit of a healing process in relation to this whole topic, she will do work with them with the horses.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely, they have this transformational few days. And yeah, it's really, again, it's all very heightened about, being very clear on your feelings, being very present with whatever's there, because obviously the horses are so sensitive that they pick up on everything. So working with horses, she says you can't hide anything.
No, you can't.
Nothing's hidden. Everything's present.
Yes.
So it's really teaching you to be very present with whatever is there.
Yes. And, literally that is how I began to discover what I wanted to do with my life, being very present with what was there, and it started before the horses, and the horses have given me a whole new level of it. Because when you actually are just very present in your life and you are in the question of, okay, so what's this? What can I do with it? Do I want to change it? Do I want to create something with it? What is it? Then you start to actually have a whole different sense of what the possibilities are. Because a lot of people sort of go to the conclusion of, oh, if this, then that,
Yes.
And my point of view with Creativity Lab is, well, let's actually unravel all those if this, then that's, and actually go, well, what else is there beyond that?
Yeah,
and
if I was letting go of the limitations, then what might be possible for me?
Yeah. And I mean, I have quite an autistic brain in some ways, and that I literally think left and right brain together. And so I see patterns in things. I see different ways of things going together than most people do. And so for me, when I talk to someone, there's all of this information about what they could do and what they could create that's beyond where they are now. And it's actually a really fun thing to play with. Like if you were to sort of plot a little timeline of your life, or a treasure map, whichever way you'd like to do it, depends if you're maybe left or right brained, and actually look at all of the things that you've discovered and all of the things that you loved at different points, and actually go, well, what can I do with that? How can I package that up? What could that create in the world? Because all of us are unique.
Yeah.
And it's such a thing, I think, for people to try and fit their creativity into something that already exists.
Yeah.
And something I love working with people on is, well, what if you created something that doesn't exist yet?
Yes, yeah. That encompasses all the things that you love and you're interested in.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, women are I think that the leaders in terms of where the world is going to be created in the future.
Yeah.
Look, I mean, men have had a great go and they've done their thing. And a lot of men actually love to be the nurturers. And this is where, we have this sort of roles quite mixed up in some way, because women love to go out and conquer the world and find out, what else they can create that will make a difference.
Well, it's working with us all, working with our own blend of masculine and feminine energy, isn't it? And I was talking to somebody the other day who said very, clearly the masculine energy holds the vision and the feminine energy brings it to life. And I thought that's a great summary.
And it is a great summary. And this is the thing. And we have both of those energies within us. And it depends how well developed they are. For a long time, my masculine energies, like in corporate, were very well developed.
Yes.
And now I've gone to this space of like adding all of those feminine energies and really nurturing things into being rather than forcing them into being.
Trying
and I
to
think
push it,
yeah, and it's it's so much more of a joyful way to live.
Absolutely. And so on that, with that sort of thinking about the difference with masculine and feminine energies, are there any women in particular who you find inspiring?
It's funny. I don't necessarily go looking for role models. This is interesting, isn't it? I'm kind of looking at it going, do I? I love Elizabeth Gilbert's approach.
Yes,
like I love her writing. I think she's quite amazing.
Yeah.
In her general, just the way she's so real with people.
Yes.
I really do enjoy that about her. So so it's funny because you asked me for women, and I actually have men probably as well.
Oh, we'll
But
say, who are they?
yeah, so the guys who started Access Consciousness, Dr. Dane
Yes.
here and Gary Douglas, like for me, they have shown me so much about what we're talking about today, and not that I've ever had a direct conversation with them about it, but the kindness that they are, you know, that really intrigues me because you don't see a lot of men who are truly kind, you know.
Right.
And when I say that, they probably are underneath, but they don't show it on the surface. And to be out there in the world and being really vulnerable and showing, that sort of nurturing, that kindness, those sorts of energies for a male is, I think it's amazing and I love it.
It's a real
And
strength, isn't it?
oh, it is. And it's interesting because I was having a funny Facebook chat with someone yesterday, and there was this guy who's quite well known in Australia. And he was saying, I got in the taxi and the taxi driver asked me 50,000 questions. And, what do you do when you don't want to answer? And I wrote back and I said, well, I just be really polite and really sweet with them and just let them know that I'm not feeling that conversational today, and I'd be really grateful if we could just drive in silence. And he wrote back and he says, men can't say that. And I'm thinking, well, you can't if you're stuck in the limitation of what you think a man is. But actually, like the guys that I just mentioned, they could say that and would say that if it was appropriate at the time.
Yeah.
And this is where I think we have to come out of what we think the roles of men and women are and actually just look at what's going to create the most.
Yeah. And just really encouraging more tolerance and understanding for where everybody's at, and closing those gaps between, I was just thinking like really closing the gaps between, well, I guess mothers and non-mothers are one of those things, but looking at how we can support each other regardless of circumstances or life choices, and just accepting that everyone's got a different purpose and a different path.
Yes. And I think that thing of embracing everyone's differences, I'm really grateful. I went to uni the first time round, and out of that, I have 3 friends that 2 of us have kids and 2 of us don't. Do we see each other as much as we used to? No. But truly, there's such an acceptance with everyone of, oh, that's just where you are and that's what you chose. And it's not a right or a wrong.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful for those friendships. And I have like lots of friends with kids, lots of friends without kids. And of course you do different things, you see them in different ways, but it's a really wonderful thing because I know there are some people who, like, if you don't want to talk mummy talk, then there is no conversation.
Yes.
And for me, that was always a bit of a struggle because I have a memory like a sieve, particularly since the burnout. And I can't remember things like how old your kids are or where they go to school. Like those things aren't they're just not in my world,
Yeah.
And so to have people be willing to just meet you wherever you are and to talk to people about whatever they can talk about creates, I think, a lot more possibilities in the world than deciding, well, one way is right and the other way is wrong, and you're definitely wrong if you didn't choose the right way,
Absolutely. And so how can we encourage more tolerance, do you think? I mean, my intention for creating this podcast was to have more of these open conversations and really highlight people's different situations and life experiences to sort of really, emphasize that a lot of these stereotypes and belief systems that we've got are really outdated and just not supporting any women, really.
Yeah, I think that you have to be what you would like to see in the world. Gandhi was right about that. It literally is about being it. It's about going, well, what possibility have I got for changing this today?
Yeah.
And being different with people. And, like there are times when I will be very clear with someone that whatever they're projecting at me is really inappropriate, I will actually say to them, hey, do you realize that that's really not even something that's relevant to me? Or I'll find whatever, it depends on the person, the situation, the conversation, but I'll actually say things to people. And it's like, what if it's just one of 10,000 choices that we make, whether we have kids or not? What if it's not, the most important choice in the world?
Yeah. Well, for some people, it's not the most important choice, is it? But then for others, it's the most important choice.
Yeah. And, wow, there's so many things you could talk about. But my sense of it is it's about what you be. And, like for my niece and nephew, I don't have a point of view if they have kids or not. They're not old enough for that yet, thankfully. But they will be, in not that many years ago. And my point of view is, well, what role model can I be that would show them that they've got all choices?
Yes. Yeah.
that to show them that actually whatever you choose, you can have a fantastic life.
Absolutely. As long as you're living what's true for you and really being yourself, then what more can you hope for?
Yeah, exactly. And, that's the most important thing really for all of this is, if you're being you, then you're going to create in the world whatever you can create. But if you're not being you, then you're just going to be miserable. And so for anyone who's listening who is like feeling a little unhappy about wherever they are right now, the biggest thing I would say literally is to go to that space of, well, where can you be more you, And, without defining yourself as a set of limitations, because one thing I noticed is as I've become more and more aware of who I am, it's like peeling off layers to allow more to show up rather than defining it to a set of this is me and these other things are not me, It's actually an expansion rather than a contraction.
Yeah, and really also becoming aware of where am I not being myself? Like, what are the situations or environments where I know I'm not really being authentic or I'm really holding parts of myself back? Why is that?
Yes.
And, so it's interesting when you start having those awarenesses, isn't it? And start noticing your own behavior.
Yes, for sure. And, for me, because I went through this funny phase where I didn't realize it, but I was trying to be someone else. And I was talking to Dr. Dane here at a class once, and I was having a bit of a meltdown. And he's like, who are you being? And I'm like, I don't know. And I'm crying, and all this. And anyway, he worked it out. And it was like, oh, I'd taken on someone's points of view about money, but actually I'd also taken on their points of view about everything, just by mistake, And it was really funny because at the time, excuse me, I couldn't, I'm a really good speller and a really good typer, and I literally couldn't spell and I couldn't type, and I couldn't work out why. And it was literally, it's almost like I'd embodied who they were. And it was like, oh, right, that's not me. And one of the things I said to him was, well, how do I know when I'm not being me? And he said, well, if you're not happy, you're not you.
Oh, right, okay.
I know, and it's such a simple thing, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that easy. If I'm not happy, I'm not me. And
Beautiful.
So now, anytime I'm not happy, my first question is, okay, well, who am I being? And everything that is. And I just literally return it all to sender, change the energy on it. And then it's like, what would I like to choose? And that one thing has made a massive difference in my life.
So really bringing your focus back into the present moment.
Yes. Well, the present moment, but also really knowing inside myself that if I'm me, I'm happy. Because I am happy most of the time, It's very rare that I'm not. And so if I'm not happy, it's like, well, what point of view have I taken on here that would actually make me not happy?
Yeah, what are you believing that's creating misery at that time? It's like the work of Byron Katie, isn't it? She's always, I love the way it's very simple but profound that misery only exists when we're believing some thoughts that we're having about a situation.
Yes, I don't know her work very well, but in effect that's true, because literally your thinking creates your misery. It's not actually you, the being, that's miserable. It's whatever you're thinking in your head most of the time.
Yeah, about what's going on. And so it's just being more conscious of our choices, as we were saying. So, well, that's great. Thank you, Lisa. And so can you share with us the best place to find out more about you and your work online?
Yes, sure. You can find me at www.creativitylab.tv. Or you can join my Facebook group on Facebook. I think it's Creativity Lab Live as the actual group name, but if you just search Creativity Lab, you'll find it easily enough. And there's lots of good fun things to play with there around all sorts of different approaches to creating and creativity. And thank you very much for having me on the show today, Michelle.
Oh, thank you, Lisa. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for listening to Unclassified Woman. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe. For information on events and services, connect with Michelle at michellemariemcgrath.com.